Hello, Becky. Thank you for being here. I am excited to talk to you about virtual assistants and what that really means because there's some misconceptions out there and you've been doing it successfully for a while. So thanks for being here and helping us learn more about you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, so let's talk about this. What is like a definition of virtual assistants? Because I want this to appeal to a couple of different types of audiences that we're talking to today. One would be someone who wants to become a virtual assistant. And the other would be someone who wants to hire one, but maybe they have some misconceptions about what range of help they can get by someone who's working virtually. So, first of all, how would you define a virtual assistant?
I would define it as someone who is able to help you basically from anywhere, but can help you specifically for what you're looking for. Because I feel like a virtual assistant is not a one size fits all type of thing. And a virtual assistant is basically someone you can have, I would say, at your fingertips because you can, like, have them ready via text, email, or any other platform like that, that can help you with your business back end things. Yeah.
Mhm. And so, back in and also planning events and all the things, and we're going to get into some of those details. It really does come down to what is needed. I should mention at the Get Out that I found you as a referral to someone who has she had a virtual assistant course and has this whole business from it. And I said, I need a virtual assistant. And she said, Becky is your girl. So thank you for being here. And we'll just take this deep dive with you. Okay. So how did you get started being a virtual assistant? Because a lot of people, do they start? Is it a part-time thing, something that you can work into a full-time thing while you're doing your other job? Or is it a side hustle? It can be all kinds of different things. What is your story?
Yeah. So I have three kiddos, two boys that are 14 and 13, and a 5-year-old daughter. And pre-kids, back in 2008, I worked as an executive admin to the VP of sales and marketing for Marie Callender's, the baking products. And that was a lot of fun. We were in the test kitchen. So, or the main office was like the test kitchen stuff. So I tasted all the yummy baked goods that they made. So that
Yeah.
was a lot. But I really enjoyed my work there. Just being able to be the person who set up all of the meetings, the food shows that the VP would go to, organizing emails, all that fun, like tedious things that he didn't have time for, I really enjoyed. 2010, I had my first kiddo at the end of the year. And so I came back part time after, and it was very hard to balance work and life. And then, to be honest, at that it probably still is now, but daycare, basically, I was paying,
Yeah.
I was getting paid, and then my money would go to daycare. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stay home with my kids. So I did. And then I had my next son very close. And so then, I became a stay-at-home mom, but I always had that um I would say itch to work. And so I had my daughter at the end of 2019, and 2020 came around and we all know what happened then. And so when the world shut down, I was, going crazy and stir crazy, and I was trying to think of what I could do. And I just started brainstorming things like in my head. I started writing down the things that I loved to do. And I kept going back to being an executive admin. I kept everything I was writing down was like, I loved doing this, this, and this, which was like organization, um, even just being a part of someone's busy life. I loved being that kind of person who helps take the stress away.
Yeah, and I think about that. Well, there's a lot of people that I talk to today who still are telling their story of the pivot they made in 2020. I mean, because a lot of them stuck with what they switched to. It's been 5 years now, and they whatever that pivot was, it worked, and it
Mhm.
changed the trajectory of their life, their family's life, and lives. And so when I think about the skills that you have that I know about already and the things that I don't want to have to think about because it's not in my skill set. I'm not that good at it, or I could do it, but I'm not good at committing to the implementation of it. I think a lot of times the virtual assistant is really good at the implementation, like making sure. Like I hired someone once just to, and this wasn't really a virtual assistant, but I hired her virtually for this one job to clean up my email box. And I mean, I'm ridiculous. I know people who clean their email box up regularly, but mine gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
And sure enough, within a month, it's ridiculous again because that's just, I don't have any habits in place that fix that problem. So we just came up with a new system where she just organized it more often because I probably wasn't going to change my ways.
Right.
But bringing someone on board who could help me stay organized, just even in my inbox, sounds silly, but was meaningful to me. Helpful, super helpful.
Yeah, yeah, for
And
sure.
I know you're talking about bigger scale things, but I'm just talking about finding efficiencies in the way that we do business and you finding a way to bring it into the work you wanted to do that you had done years before that made you think about doing this at all.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely struggled during that time in 2020 of like just being burnt out of being at home all the time with the kids. So when I discovered that I could, that everyone was working remote, then I was like, oh, I can totally do this and implement like what I've learned in the past and learn new things and then kind of do that virtually. So that way I'm getting my cup filled, personally. So that way I'm even a better attitude at the end of the day, or even after an hour of doing something remote work, I felt so much better because I was doing something for me.
Feeling productive.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
to fill up other cups in the family.
Can't have
Yeah.
empty cups. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about what that looks like compared to like what kind of jobs would a person in business, whether it's an entrepreneur who works independently or a business that needs to hire someone for a project that they just don't have enough in-house help with. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We are talking with Becky, and you are educating us about a virtual assistant gig and how that works. And it can start off as part-time, worked into full-time. You started yours in 2020 after working as an executive admin years before. So give us an idea for the business owners of what it looks like, what a virtual assistant would be hired for, because some people just think it means this digital space that you only work at a computer or in those kinds of projects, but you could help plan an in-person event even if you never show up in person.
Yeah. So I would say that a virtual assistant, I feel like they're starting to pop up a lot of now, which is great because one thing that I really like about being a virtual assistant is that it helps businesses, small businesses, or even bigger businesses, be able to kind of get contract work for projects, like you said, where they don't have to worry about giving benefits or anything like that. We're independent contractors, so we don't get all those things, which we know as independent contractors. But I think that it's super helpful for businesses because a lot of them don't know. They might be thinking like, oh, I need to give them benefits or this and that. And it's not like that. So I think that that's kind of a plus for business owners, especially small businesses who are starting off and they don't have the funds to have like a team, like employees.
Right.
And get a independent contractor. But also aside from that, I feel like virtual assistants can range from so many different things based on what they've learned in the past, in their past jobs or anything like that. You can have people not just in the digital space, but like, you mentioned planning events or things like that. Like I could easily look for venues or do like the research behind it that you might not have time for, or we can do research where we're looking for venue options, looking to see how we can market that, do marketing for that event, do all those things that might be time consuming for entrepreneurs or business owners that they don't have time for. So it's more than just them checking emails or doing inbox management, calendar management. It can, there are also people who are really good at, they love social media and they're very on trend. Like they know what's going on with TikTok and things like that. They can easily turn that passion into like helping a business with their social media.
Management, things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool because virtual assistants can literally mean anything that you've learned. You just create, your own, I don't want to say package, but you basically create your own package of what you can offer someone.
Systems
And then,
that you put in place.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
One of the things, well, I use the email part as an example because that's when it started kind of making me realize there were other things that could be done. And when I went on the Don't Wait Project tours, 2018, I planned all myself. 2019, I planned all myself. 2020, I hired a VA to help me with it. And then 2020 tour got canceled. So I'd use some of my budget to have help because it's a lot of work to plan a tour. It takes all year. And then when it was time to go in 21, it got canceled again. And some of those stories didn't last, a year. The stories were done. They weren't stories anymore, really. They weren't in the news. Some of them were long-standing stories that would have worked no matter what. So when I think about planning something to take, something that was multiple states, whether it would have been here in our community or multiple states figuring out where are those stories, what could that be? And one of the things, helping someone find their way through any project. I think sometimes when I was working with the VA for the tour, she thought of things I hadn't thought of. And I had already planned 2 tours. So having that extra collaboration, I think, is also key because it can change the outcome, based on those collaborative ideas that 2 people share or more people.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have, like I said, I've seen a huge rise in virtual assistants, and it makes me happy to see that people are using so many things in their lives to kind of help others and help themselves, so.
What's a typical day like for you as a virtual assistant?
Yeah. So I'm huge, so I help. My huge thing is I love organization. So I help, business owners be organized. So I love to make sure I time block my days. So I dedicate time to my clients. And so my typical day is, I wake up at around 7:30 or 8, depending on if it's school season or not. And then I get my coffee and I set up my workspace in the kitchen. I do have a desk in the office, but I like how I can just, not be confined. So I have my desk in the kitchen while the kids are eating breakfast. I'm doing my work and they already know when laptop's open, mom's busy.
Yeah.
And then
what are the ages of your kids?
Yeah, 14, 13 boys, and then my 5-year-old daughter.
Okay.
So my 5-year-old daughter, I try to make it during the summer. I try to do very shorter time frames. She'll be in full-time school for kindergarten next year or in the fall. So I'm excited for that. But so I do shorter amounts of time so that way I'm, tending to her and she's
The whole purpose was to try to be home with them more.
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah. So, but yeah, typical days where I sit and I block out at least 2 to 3 hours. And then I go on with my day. Sometimes there's busy days where I just am either I go work out or I do things and then I'm kind of working in between time blocks, or in between, random hours, but I definitely make sure that I block out time specifically for the clients, especially because I'm very big on integrity. So I'm not going to be saying, oh, I'm doing this amount of hours when I'm not. So I'm huge on that. I even have, like I told you, a little timer on my phone where I'm clocking in, clocking out. So it's really covering even down to the minutes because I feel like that's really important, just to be honest. And,
Yeah. Yeah, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to give people a real specific idea of what you do. And then also for people who are thinking they might not have the skill sets they need to be a virtual assistant, when really, I think it's kind of like digital products. A lot of times people think, and I talk about digital products on the show a lot, that they think, oh, if I don't have this great big skill, how could I teach it? Or I'm not an expert, but you just have to be a couple of steps ahead of the person you're teaching. And so if you have a skill set that somebody else doesn't even know how to develop, or maybe doesn't want to develop, then you can be using that skill set to earn a living, working from anywhere you want and having that flexibility. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, Becky, we've been talking with you about virtual assistants, and you've been a virtual assistant since 2020. There was the big whole thing that happened in the entire world on the planet, and you made a transition into virtual assistants after having years of experience as an executive admin. Wise transition, and enables you the flexibility that you have with your three kids. And there's a difference. Obviously, there's a difference between in-person and virtual assisting. Like if I had an in-person assistant, my office wouldn't look like this because you're always talking about organization. Like this looks lovely. You see the back of my wall, but if you could see the rest, it's just not, doesn't look like this. And so there would be a lot more organization in my business life for sure. I know where things are, but maybe other people wouldn't. And so then that's the obvious the virtual to in person. But sometimes the virtual in person isn't that big of a jump, right? For what you can do. It's not just about being in person, but what are some examples of the work that people might have a skill set? Like you said, organization. People think, well, I can't be there to help her with her office or getting organized, but what are the types of things that you organize for a business if you're doing it virtually?
Yeah. So one thing that really sticks to mind is a client that I had when I first started. Basically, all her orders, she does catering businesses or a business, and all of her orders were on post-it notes, notepads, a whole bunch of different things. And I remember she just didn't have any system put in place. So I never met with her in person. We live very close to each other. So we're in the same state, same city. And I just was like, I can totally help you with that. And what I did was I created or helped her start up her Honeybook, which is a CRM system for customer invoices, things like that. And basically got her set up with a website to make sure that people can order from. So we went from post-it notes order forms to actual, bigger events ordering forms, or even for her smaller items, a website. So that's something that I was able to do without having to physically go and like see her. I
Even
was
though you
able to,
could have been.
yes.
And so
Yeah,
that change, how did that change your business? I'm sure it improved efficiencies and probably increased orders.
it definitely did. Because there weren't orders falling through the cracks. There weren't things that were getting missed or yeah, so definitely improved that. And then organically she grew on her social media, but in the area her business definitely expanded and or got popular because of the systems we put in place. Yeah.
And so what is an example of someone watching about like what are skill sets that you see other virtual assistants using? Like your specialty is organization. What are some other things that people can do if they're watching or thinking, well, I don't do this or I don't do that. What are some things that they do that could translate to being a virtual assistant?
Yeah, so I know that sometimes people who really enjoy either they've been like either a teacher or elementary school teacher, let's say, who loved English and loves to either write or read, they can easily become a copywriter or someone for social media like content, helping create content like that. I feel like that's a good one to like say. Another few other VAs that I have seen. Um, are people who love like graphic designs. They can create social media, either post, and it doesn't have to be just Instagram. It can be, email marketing, flyers or things like that. Let's see what else. I think there's so many things that, can really pop out to people. So.
When I was thinking that when you were saying that, when we talk about content, let's talk about that for a minute because some people don't really understand what that means if they're not on social media. And if you have a business and you're not on social media, it's not required. I mean, I teach all kinds of different ways of getting visibility without social media. But let's just say you're interested in having social media presence. When you talk about content and being a writer, they're thinking, well, I just see videos, but there's captions and there's calls to action and there's things that you write and newsletters that go out and freebies, we call them, where you sign up for something for free and now you get on the email list that they need to receive emails and all of those things. So for someone who isn't sure what that looks like, that could be a really big, huge, helpful piece of the marketing of their business.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned that you're able to teach people how to, gain an audience. I think that's what you said, without having social media, because One thing that when I first started my virtual assistant business, I didn't have right away a virtual page, or my business page, sorry, on Instagram. So I was able to do a lot, like, because people didn't find me through Instagram at first. It was more like I reached out, to businesses, whether I was looking on even Facebook or things like that, or just reaching out to local businesses that were smaller and starting out. But I think that that's a good thing to point out, is that you don't need to have social media in the beginning to start your virtual assistant business. You don't need a website. You don't need all these big things. You just need that tool, that something that you can offer that client, that special sauce, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you work mostly with personal brands like me, or do you work with small businesses that might have even a storefront, or they have a product-based business?
Um, so you're the first one, like you. So this is so exciting. So I've done mostly small businesses, not with storefronts, but small businesses, mostly in the catering food part. So that's kind of what's been mine.
Okay. And that's based on the things you did before. So let's talk about that for just a minute. We just have a couple minutes left. So one of the things that you're doing, so people who are watching the show, you will be helping me book guests for the show. And I've done that myself for 100 years, it feels like. And I would say that it's the greatest challenge of all the work I do. It's the biggest challenge I have, because it requires me reaching out to people and nurturing and inviting. And I love doing it because what I love most is going to an event and getting to meet somebody and saying, hey, come on my show. And when I don't have that in place, then I need to go out and get it in other ways. And so having you learn how I do that, and we're hoping it works, because I hope it works, that it's not me reaching out, but we're going to give that a try. So that's something you haven't done before.
Right. And it was a lot of fun. It's very like, it's time consuming. I was gonna say tedious, but it's not. It's time consuming. So I can see how that was taking up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
It's the searching part, the research part and things like that. So
yeah, and it's always it's like having homework as a kid. It's always something I've got to, no matter what else I feel like I've gotten done, I got to get the show booked. And so, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I didn't have a guest booked, only because of a timeline thing. It wasn't because I hadn't had it booked. We just had to change things. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do a show. I'm going to do an episode all by myself. And that really felt good, because in all these years, I've never done that. And I can, and I did. And that's good to know, because I want to continue to serve the audience no matter what's going on, no matter how busy I am in other aspects. I want to make sure I do a good job on the show. So thank you for your help in advance. And anyone who starts paying attention to the new guests, you will be the one who is helping me book those. So I appreciate that. We're crossing our fingers.
yes.
Well, thank you for all things virtual assistant. Thanks for explaining it to us. I hope there's somebody who's watching, or people who are watching who've been thinking about it, because it was one of the things I'd considered many years ago, because it is something that you can do from anywhere. And I'm all about doing work from anywhere. If you can have that flexibility, it's key, I think. So keep up the good work. Thank you.